Activate Your Introvert, the weekly show to help leaders build performance by understanding introversion. In this week's show, Leadership Tip of the Week. Introverts don't need to be managed differently to everybody else. Everybody needs to be managed in the right way for them. A discussion with Heidi Skiro. Heidi is a specialist in outsourced HR and employment law for SMEs. She's been heavily involved in the return to work, office, hybrid debate lately. Introvert Myth of the Week. Introverts are reluctant to answer tough questions. And Question of the Week. Why don't introverts like small talk? I've often been asked if it takes longer to manage introverts and if you should manage introverts differently. You should. And you shouldn't. You should manage your team to get the most from your whole team, not just part of them. Being adaptable and treating each person slightly differently at different times is going to get more from your team than treating them all the same. So it's not managed introverts differently, it's manage all staff appropriately. If you manage people more effectively, you'll be saving time by having less problems and downtime afterwards. Let's pick on meetings, where people often say introverts are less likely to speak up, leading me to give apparent instructions to manage introverts differently. Thinking of the introverted third of your team, can you improve meetings without taking any longer and treating some people slightly differently? Here's a couple of ideas. Number 1. Start earlier in the day where it's possible. Introverts get more drained with social interaction, so meetings earlier in the day are likely to have more energy. And you know what? That might help others too. Number 2. Agenda and data earlier. Sending information a few days earlier rather than in the meeting makes a big difference, certainly to the introverts and their internal processing. But you know what? It takes you no longer and it helps everybody. Number 3. It's okay to think. Getting everybody to join in the discussion gives better results, which saves time. So build a culture where introverts know it's okay to take time to think about an issue or question. If others also take time to think about issues and question, you will get better results all over. Number 4. Direct questions. If an introvert hasn't commented already, or if anybody hasn't commented already in a discussion, ask them directly what they think, perhaps after some others have shared their ideas. Perhaps flag up to them that you will ask them in a moment or two. Number 5. Negative culture. Discourage negative feedback in the team. An objective point explaining why something doesn't work is okay, but teasing, sarcasm, or personal critiques don't really help. If the culture stops people wanting to say anything, it needs fixing. None of those are specific for introverts. All will help your introverts and your whole team. What would you like to know about introversion in business? Neil wants to know, why don't introverts like small talk? It's true, most introverts don't enjoy small talk, but then there are extroverts who don't enjoy it either. Reasons normally include things like prefer deeper conversation, normally with a few select friends. It feels fake. It gets in the way of real conversation. It could also be about how one chooses to use one's valuable energy. If you're going to lose people energy as an introvert, you want to spend it on something worthwhile. It can also be about internal processing, which means some introverts are going to feel less comfortable chatting because they're aware of that internal processing gap. Well, those are my ideas. What about you? Add a comment to the Facebook page where there's a discussion about it. What question would you like answered on the show? Whether you want to be on the show or just have your question answered like Neil, go to activateyourintrovert.co.uk where there's a box for you to ask your question. You could also follow on Facebook and discuss the answers at the show's page, which is Activate Your Introvert. Now it's time to hear from Heidi. Welcome, Heidi.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Brilliant to actually catch up finally. I know we're going to have a great discussion in a few minutes about the whole return to work or the hybrid working that many people are involved in at the moment and some of the issues that people should look out for. But just before we dive into that, are you an introvert or an extrovert?
I find this question really difficult actually, because anyone who knows me would say, oh, you're not an introvert, you're an extrovert, because I am quite socially confident and comfortable around other people, and I'm not at all reserved. But I think there's different types of introverts. And so I think I'm probably more on the introvert than I am on the extrovert, because I definitely recharge my batteries by spending time on my own. I like social situations, but I prefer to spend my time with kind of smaller groups, family, close friends, because spending time with big groups of people I don't know very well, does take it out of me in terms of my energy. And I hate being the center of attention. And it's not necessarily shyness, it's just a preference. So maybe I'm an ambivert.
Many people who are introverts say very, very similar. I've been told that because I wear bright colours, I can't be an introvert. So on that basis, nor can you today, Heidi.
Bright yellow.
What's that meant to you in terms of developing your business?
Initially, the thing that I was most fearful of was networking events and going networking where I know absolutely no one. I knew that it would be fine because I can talk to anybody, and I knew it would take a lot of energy as well, but it's not really worked out that way. Some of the networks I've joined are just full of really lovely people, and it's one part of the business development that I've actually really enjoyed more than I thought I would.
So in a sense, if you gave a tip for networking, it would be find a group of people that you really get on with.
Definitely.
Like it.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit more about hybrid working. To me, it's where somebody or your staff work partly in the office and partly at home. Would that be the way you look at it from an HR perspective?
It is. Hybrid working's always existed. It hasn't had the spotlight that it's got now, really, because of the pandemic. But it is an arrangement where a person or a group of employees can work a bit more flexibly in terms of working some of their time at home and some of their time in the office, which has existed in some businesses for a while.
I was going to say I've been working from home and from hybrid from, well, as long as I can remember, to be honest, and that's over 20 odd years. So.
There are a lot of businesses out there that have the sort of mindset of presenteeism. If you're not present in the office, you're not working. And it was all about how long you sat in the office for rather than what your outputs were. There are still a lot of those businesses around. But I think the pandemic has taught people a heck of a lot about trust and the fact that you don't have to be sat at your desk to actually be productive.
Absolutely. So what do you think the benefits of hybrid working are?
I think one of the main ones for businesses is that it's what employees want. I think it's probably what employees have always wanted, but never really felt they could have. And I saw some stats recently, and it said that 57% of employees expect that they will only be in the office for about 10 days every month.
Wow.
98% believe that the future is hybrid working, and that when they're in meetings and things like that, there will always be remote participants in those meetings via some form of technology.
I think that one's quite interesting, because a couple of surveys I've seen said people certainly expect different types of meetings and different size of meetings to be remote or face-to-face. So client development ones are more likely to be face-to-face. Big town hall type meetings, much more likely to be remote.
Yeah, there's something to be said about having the hybrid working, because it's actually can be more productive. And I think with employees these days, we always knew that the new generation coming through want to choose when and where they work. That's the younger generation today. That's how they've grown up. It's not kind of lifelong employees anymore. But if businesses want to attract and keep the best talent, they are going to have to think about a flexible culture. And I think that will also boost their corporate image, if you like, in terms of, what they were able to offer.
I can't remember what the HR term for it was, but there's something about being a great employer makes it a lot easier to get great employees.
Oh, definitely. And also how engaged employees feel with the organisation. And engagement and motivation are there's definitely synergies, but they're two different things. If you as an employee feel that the organisation is giving you something that you value and therefore you feel happier, all the statistics and all the research for years shows that you will be more productive as well in terms of helping that organisation meet its goals.
And do you think that hybrid working affects extroverts and introverts differently?
I think that for an introvert, I actually think hybrid working works very well because they are likely to be happier in their own environment without the distraction of all the noise around them, and probably will get on far better from home. Whereas the extroverts, I think they'll enjoy a little bit of that, but they will want that social face-to-face interaction and the noise and the buzz around them of an office.
And certainly I think one of the things that came across to me from the pandemic, certainly last year, was when people were saying, oh, introverts will love just being at home. But that was wrong, because whilst they, as you just said, they enjoy the being at home bit for when they're recharging their energy, but introverts also want to socialize too, just not perhaps as much or in a different way to extroverts. Yeah. Before we dive too much into that, though, what are the issues to look out for? So if I've got an organisation and I'm getting my team to work in a hybrid way, what kind of issues should I look out for?
Fairness. There's got to be one, as an organisation, will hybrid working be available to everyone? And if an organisation doesn't feel like they can give hybrid working to everyone, what will the impact of that be? Inclusivity, where hybrid working is implemented in a kind of an uneven way, that could lead to an office in crowd, a bit of a clique in the office, and then have a knock-on effect in terms of diversity and inclusion, where you know, a lot of people who want hybrid working and want to be working at home are more women, carers, people with health issues, or even introverts opting to work from home. There's an inclusivity issue to be really aware of there. And also collaboration and innovation are important. And my personal opinion is that Zoom calls and Microsoft Teams aren't really the best forum for that. Doing it from behind a screen, it's always better to kind of come up with new ideas and be more creative when you're all hustling down together, really.
I certainly think that collaboration can work well, but it's been very different to get managers to work collaboratively last year to, say, over the last 5 or 6 years ago. And I think working collaboratively is a different skill when some people are in the office and some people are at home. I was really interested by the inclusivity one, though. I mean, you said fairness, which made sense to me. You said collaboration, which comes up, but the inclusivity one, do you think that some people will get treated differently because they're in the office then? Is that because they can get hold of the boss more easily? Or
I think the people in the office will be more visible, yes. Could it affect people's promotion prospects? Possibly. If an employer has this kind of feeling that those in the office, they know better, they know how they perform because they're seeing them more regularly, versus those at home who are kind of working really hard but behind the scenes, if you like, because they're not as visible in the office, having those coffee corridor chats or whatever it might be.
I've certainly said to introverts when I've been working with them over the last year, if you're working from home, get much more into sharing your progress with your boss, arrange regular catch-up times, because the extrovert will tend to pick up the phone and just chat because they need to chat. From an introverted perspective, make sure you've got times when you are doing those updates. What kind of HR type of issues should people look out for if they're going to move their workforce to hybrid or home working?
It's probably more questions that businesses need to ask themselves. So can they distinguish between flexible working and hybrid working? So when they go to hybrid working, are they offering complete flexibility as to when an employee works from home, or are they offering a home/office pattern? And businesses will need to think about all the detail that goes into that. So are there going to be any days where it's compulsory for somebody to be in the office? Is even working from home compulsory or voluntary? As an employer, do you have the right to override when someone's working at home? Do you want that right? Do they have to make up office days if they miss office days because they've chosen to work from home? What about travel expenses, dress codes when working from home? There's quite a lot of detail to kind of really think about in terms of the employer policies, if you like.
That kind of stuff would go in an employee handbook or policy documents of some sort.
Yes, it would. I mean, employee handbooks are vital, more vital now than they were before, because it helps new and existing employees understand what are the rules around here, how do we work, what's the culture, what are the values, and what's expected of me.
And I like that distinction you made between flexible and hybrid working, because I presume flexible just means, yes, I can do my job, but when I need to, or in different ways, whereas hybrid is much more kind of the 9 to 5, if I can put it like that, but sometimes in the office, sometimes at home. What would you say if I asked for a tip for an extrovert, perhaps an extroverted manager who's managing hybrid working? How could they make that more effective?
Great leadership is all about how well you know your people. It stems from there anyway. And I think one tip I would give to any leader managing employees who are working remotely or in the office would be understand who they are and understand what motivates them, because everybody is motivated by different things and everybody perceives issues differently. So there will be things that one person feels dissatisfied by that another person won't. So I think if they get to know their people, they will have far more success as to how they manage them in terms of their motivation.
And flip it the other way around. So perhaps if there's an introvert working from home.
I think the advice that you gave earlier was great advice. Make sure that you are giving progress reports to your boss or to colleagues. Let them know what you're doing, because I do think there is a danger that it could be out of sight, out of mind.
That's fantastic, Heidi. Thank you. I'm absolutely sure that some of the listeners want to get back in touch with you. What's the easiest way for them to do that?
Probably via my LinkedIn profile, which is H Skirrow, SKIRROW.
Brilliant. Okay, and I'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile on the show notes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time this morning. It's been brilliant to talk.
You're very welcome. And if anybody needs any employment law type advice, there are some things to look out for from that point of view as well. So I'm here if anyone wants to get in contact with me.
And now it's time for Introvert Myth of the Week. Those crazy stories that I hear and you hear that some people actually believe. This week's myth: introverts don't like tough questions. I heard this one getting discussed in the French Open Tennis Championship, where there were many stories circulating about Naomi Osaka. Maybe last week's Wimbledon Championships got it started up again, but I've heard it a few times lately. It's no more true to say introverts don't like tough questions than anybody else. Maybe introverts don't look as comfortable answering them, partly down to that introvert processing gap again. A slightly slower and more detailed answer will come out if you give them the chance. But often that isn't what the press want to hear. But think about it. Who do you know that does like answering tough and maybe personal or critical questions? Most people say Trump is an extrovert. He certainly doesn't always like tough questions. In the show notes, there's a link to an article based on an interview I did with ex-journalist and author Michael Dodd. It goes into this in more detail and ideas on how to improve your asking and answering of questions, which will help to get round this week's myth. I'm John Baker. Thank you for listening. I hope you found it useful. There's a new episode every Thursday at activateyourintrovert.co.uk and your favourite podcast provider. Till then, go be introversial, activating your introverts, building your business.